Hello and welcome to an episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. We'll have a better intro and outro once Don and I get our hands and properly play around with perp dexes and WooFi. You should check it out, but the topic of the day, Don, isn't exactly perp dexes and WooFi, is it? It's Bybit news, actually. They seem to have suffered a hack of over $1 billion.
Yeah,
which is
jump change.
kind of, I mean, people think that's a lot of money, according to crypto Twitter. Like maybe you can half retire if you live in Phuket or something.
Yeah, if you're in Africa, you're fine.
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty bad. So obviously you were spreading FUD and telling everyone to withdraw everything in a mass panic.
I would, yeah.
I think you even told people to short, right? And go all in short and withdraw at the same time. Not exactly sure what your messaging was hitting at, to be honest. It was kind of confusing. Okay, shitposts aside, centralized exchange hacks obviously really bad. $1 billion is a lot. And I think the game theory, as we know from previous experience and just in general, like if you withdraw and nothing's wrong, like it's fine, right? You don't really lose out on anything. At most, you arguably lose out on some opportunity cost of a trade. But given that the other side of that is like what, existential wipeout in a worst case scenario, whatever opportunity cost you think is super important, or I have to be in this trade even if my counterparty risk just 50x'd, it's probably not that deep, bro, as the kids say. Do you agree with that framework? I think that's more or less what you were hitting at. How do you reason about these things more broadly?
I mean, this is 0.4% of all ETH, as far as I understand, that they got hacked for, which is fucking nuts. Like, that's a huge number. For Bybit, as far as I know, and as far as I've checked their documents and everything that they have, their transparency board, that's roughly pretty much exactly what they have on the side for this kind of thing. Like, it's pretty much 1-to-1 what they have, like, to spend on something like this, as in they should be fine if everything's accurate. But I 100% agree with you. Like, what's like the biggest drawdown of just taking the money off as fast as you can, which should have happened the moment this came out, in my opinion, is that you have to kind of like have some funds in limbo, right, that you cannot trade with, but that should be fine. Like, you should never have all your money on one exchange in the first place. So you can just pick whatever you like. You can just, and that's what leverage is for, right? Like, that money, like, let's say you had a trade going, you have to close it. You can just reopen it on another exchange, increase the leverage there until your funds kind of hit back. So I think it's just the only thing that makes sense in a situation like this. Just withdraw from the exchange, stay away. Use one of the hundreds other ones, right? I mean, there's infinite nowadays. There's even decentralized exchanges that you can use, like Hyperliquid, WooFi, the sponsor of this show. Like, there's a shitload that you can use. So I don't really see a good reason to stay, at least not with a large portion of your portfolio, right? Like, I think the chances that this goes poorly and Bybit goes under are very, very slim. Like, I would give it like 1% chance or whatever. But if that 1% is just wipes you completely, that's not worth it, right? But if you have like 5% of your funds on Bybit and you're fine with losing that because you're in a trade and you don't want to pay the fees, because what you have to remember is that if you close your trade on Bybit and then move it somewhere else, you have to basically pay fees twice. And that's like a little bit of a percentage. So you kind of have to consider whether you think the odds of Bybit going under are higher than that percentage. But I don't know. For me, it's pretty straightforward. Like, I see something like this happen, I just take my money off, trade elsewhere until it's all kind of like, until like a couple of months have passed and everything's over, because
Until
it's going to take a while.
All the ETH, Don.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hilarious part, right? Like, this only affects ETH, which is, I mean, so fucking typical, right? Like, their ETH cold wallet got drained entirely, as far as I understand. And they actually, I mean, they owe it to their customers, right? So what technically could happen if they don't recover the funds from the hacker is that they they have to get the ETH in another way. And as far as I've known, and I've talked with a couple of people, they have multiple ways to get to like a lot of ETH, but not to all of it. So they would have to buy some of it, which in past days, right, like in better times, would pump ETH 10x and would make them buy like the Giga Pico top before it fully reverses. Nowadays, the market is really boring and stuff like that doesn't really happen anymore, sadly.
Yeah, that would have been fun. I mean, look, the whole thing about counterparty risk is like no one usually gives a shit until you have to give a shit, and then it's sort of too late, you know?
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad. That's just kind of how the reputation of leverage has developed, not only in crypto, but I mean, in other markets as well. It just seems like especially pertinent in crypto because like the counterparty risk is probably higher than any other industry, I'd say. Like even on like tier 1 centralized exchanges, your counterparty risk is still much higher than like some properly regulated, Robinhood type of place. Or, even in the UK, so the sort of FCA requirements mean that funds are completely segregated with all these licensed brokers with 1 million licenses, so on and so forth. So like inherent crypto counterparty risk is high. So you'd think that most people would accommodate that, but in reality, leverage,
no one gives a fuck.
No one gives a fuck, right? Like you have leverage and people understandably, and we've done this and we do this, I'm sure, just use it to put off fucking massive position sizes, right? In reality, the whole point of leverage, as you mentioned, is that, if you normally trade with say 100k, you keep whatever amount, 50, 20, 30, depending on how you trade on the exchange, and you can keep your effective position sizes and notional exposures without having to keep your entire collateral base on that exchange. It's like, that's cool. That's a good thing. You're mitigating a risk that's like pretty important in crypto. And there are so many good exchanges nowadays that you don't even suffer that much for doing so, right? Like maybe it's a few bips here or there in execution from not keeping it in one place, but that's better than having like existential wipeout risk for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, at least theoretically, every single day. So, I mean, these kinds of events are generally poster children for giving people a bit of a wake-up call and managing this stuff. But most of the time, especially if the market's been good to people, they just get a bit lazy. And it's like, oh, well, I want to keep all my funds on X exchange because, that's where they list the fastest, for example, so on and so forth. So I don't know. Post 20 whatever the fuck, like time is a flat circle. The idea that like, oh, this really bad thing happened, so we'll learn from it for future cycles is just like not true. No. We don't learn anything. Like as soon as the number goes up, we're like, holy fucking shit, credit cycle, dodgy counterparties, KOLs, scams, fraud, charismatic leaders, fucking give me as long as number go up.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like I think the market really doesn't learn, but like the traders that have been around learn at least a little bit. So, for example, for us, if you like think back about the times where BitMEX had like constantly had the overload issues in 2018, 19, and then at some point the entire exchange actually crashed for a couple hours, and that's kind of where I learned that you have to have money on multiple margin exchanges, at least back then, because I had a BitMEX position open that I wanted to close, right? And I was like, I just cannot open the exchange. Like, the fuck do I do? And then I had to like really fast kind of like transfer some funds over to another exchange, and I just basically took the opposite position, like same position size as I had on BitMEX, and hedged my position that way. And ever since then, like this has not happened to me where I'm like sitting on one exchange and I don't have at least enough funds to cover that entire position on another, right? So basically, let's say you have like an ETH long at 3K, and then your exchange goes down for whatever reason. You want to be able to hedge that entire position on another exchange to close it, right? It's just common sense when you think about it. But what people do is they don't, and then they go to the exchange and complain about like whatever maintenance or some major like hack that's going on. But at the end of the day, you're kind of responsible for your own safety in that regard. Not only like by not putting all your eggs in one basket if an exchange gets hacked, but also just to be able to actually trade the trade in a way that you wanted to, which is not always a given, right? Like every single exchange has maintenances. Every exchange can get hacked in one way or another, and you want to be sure you can kind of like just like have the ability to trade even if the main exchange that you trade on is not online. I think that's just very, very straightforward. And I mean, today is probably going to teach a lot of people that exact same thing, because if you were in a long before this happened, right? You're like, fuck, like maybe I want to keep that position, but I cannot now because I have to sell it and withdraw my money from Bybit. Like I had a lot of people message me like this. They were like, I'm underwater and I don't want to close my position. What the fuck do I do? But I don't want to have my money on Bybit. And I'm like you put yourself in a really shit position in the first place.
I mean,
because
I don't know, you got to secure your future first, right? Am I insane?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's just like sometimes you want to, in that position, you do want to be able to like manage your trade, right? And you don't want to be forced out of it. That's why you have to have multiple accounts and funds on different exchanges. But in that case, like for me, unless it's like a short, like this was bad news, right? And the market obviously went down with it. Trump helped. Trump kind of talked about tariffs again, typical Friday stuff. So we had like this double news event. And so if you were short, you're just like, fuck it, I'm short this because this is bearish news. I mean, then fair enough, right? You might as well, like, if that's the play and you don't have any funds elsewhere and it's just a short-term play. But I think it's just very risky. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket for that 1%. Because if that 1% comes and you're wiped out and you cannot get back in the game, it's just over for you, right? And you don't want to ever have that risk.
Yeah, I think that's completely reasonable. The thing that the people care most about, though, Don, up or down? You were posting some high time frame charts. The weekly is actually still really fucking boring, which is sad.
Yeah.
Like it's such a good time frame, but holy shit.
It looked so good today, though. Like it looked so good at the highs, and then you
that's a classic quote.
No, but then you get the double whammy of like fucking Trump talking about tariffs, and then immediately afterwards, Bybit gets hacked. I think actually, like we were setting up for some nice breakouts. This is why a lot of the altcoins are in so much pain right now, because they were like setting up nicely and then they got rug pulled, which means a bunch of people are just sitting on positions that would have been on side that usually like get extra pain on top of everything, just because when you have like a really nice breakout setting up that gets rug pulled, it's just a bunch of people on the wrong side of the market. And I think in this case, it's not really the fault of the people that were trading it on the long side, other than like maybe reacting to the news faster, right? I think this was setting up for a nice breakout, and it got stuffed by both Trump and this, which is obviously not nice for traders. But high time frame, nothing's changed. The weekly's not changed. The monthly's not changed. Gonna have to wait a little bit, I think, until we start breaking out levels, like until we start closing the weekly above 100K or the daily below 95. I think there's really not that much that's going to happen.
Oh, I wish you had better news. I think the daily was actually, as you mentioned, shaping up as one of the better timeframes. Like we were talking about the misery of the intraday timeframes last week. And I think the 4 hour and daily were like trying to have a go, like there was at least an effort made there from, for example, from previous week's low having been taken and sort of a push up through that. On the daily, it was going to make the first higher daily close in a while, right? Like throughout this entire consolidation. It went for it yesterday, which was seen as a bit of a sort of market structure push. And I think the 4 hour is the most obvious one. Around 98-ish, however you want to draw that. Or you could even go trendline city if you wanted to. A pretty ugly one. But yeah, obviously this, I think the main point here is that the news isn't real, Don, and it was essentially baked into the chart. I don't know if you looked at the RSI OBV, but like
the Bybit hack.
This shit was as soon as I saw the bearish divergence, I was DMing all the exchange CEOs, telling them to check their hot wallet security, because I mean, you don't see divergences like that if it's not big insider news, and no one listened to me for reasons that I can't explain. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
What use do you think TA is in cases like this, where sort of the market looks one way and then something like this comes out, which brings in a bunch of, I think, price insensitive sellers, right?
Yeah.
Like by definition. How do you then? What makes it appropriate to go back to TA world? And you also mentioned before this call that some sort of S&P shit. Like when you get a noise event like this, how do you smooth it out?
I mean, the only thing that you can do with TA is just judge relative strength. I think in these cases, like you have a clear event like the Bybit hack, like that's a lot of people have money on Bybit, right? A lot of people have positions on Bybit, and a lot of that is unwinding or has unwound. And there's also a lot of money that just got stolen, where people are like, is there going to be like 1 billion of ETH sell pressure now? Probably not, but like all of that is like just like hanging over everyone's head. But I honestly think the Bybit news is not necessarily what's driving this down as much as the S&P is just going down. Like the S&P is down 1% today. Bitcoin is 1.3%, while the Bybit hack happened as well. I think this is just basically like a correlation event with the S&P. But the only way you can really use TA for this is just relative strength. Like if the market is holding up much better, even though like the news is really bad and the S&P is kind of dragging everything down. So for example, if today we close green while the S&P still looks like what it does right now, and I mean the Bybit hack just happened, like that'd be a sign of strength, and that'd be useful TA. Otherwise, I think it's a little bit like people that are saying everything is in the chart. I think they've completely cooked all their brain cells. It's not like a hack like this. Like you think the hackers, before they get successful with the hack, they're just on the exchanges and they're just wildly selling like billions of cryptocurrencies to like make even more profit off the hack. Probably not. If anything, they hack, they are successful, they start shorting, and then they try to dump it, right? But if like just generally like this whole thing where people like everything's in the chart, I find really stupid. Makes no sense to me. Like some things are unpredictable, and then there's no insiders to trade on it, and then that's obviously not baked into the chart. So I mean, what I'm saying essentially is that TA is not always useful in these kind of circumstances.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Bit of a mixed reaction across the board, right? It's not like fully red. I mean, ETH took the brunt of it. There are some green altcoins, believe it or not.
I mean, there was a lot of green altcoins before this happened.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's more of a retrace type of dynamic.
Yeah.
I don't know whether there's other commentary to make TA-wise on BTC. I mean, we could do the whole thing, it tried to break out and then it broke back down type of shit. Do you think that's compelling or...
Nah, because because I mean, at the end of the day, like this is a different story from like it tried to break out and then it got like it just didn't have the bid. This is a story of it tried to break out and then fucking World War III went on chain, right? Like Bybit hack, Trump kind of starting shit again. I don't think that's necessarily the way to look at it. Now, obviously, I mean, if it starts like if it has even more weakness now and kind of follows through and starts losing 95k, which is the range low on the daily, I could see that easily have some more follow through towards 90k, just because we've been resting on 95k support this entire time. But like that's like we're in a range right now between 95 and 100k, and we hit the range high and then got massive FUD, and now we're retracing a little bit. But I don't think you would necessarily need to make much more comments than okay, it's just in a range, it's ranging. Until one side gives up on that, I don't really think there's much to say.
Fair enough. Yeah, 95k has been some sort of fucking adamantium floor recently with all these wicks. So it's tradition for us to FUD it and then it's the bottom, right? There's like whenever Technical Roundup has never seen a support we didn't like FUDding before. Like especially if it gets tested more than once, we're like, oh, this thing is washed, like it's over. It's never gonna hold again, which is really fun when it does.
I mean, I'm gonna FUD both. Like
great.
100k resistance, like we go back up there, send it. Like I don't think that's gonna hold. And the 95k support, we go back there. I don't know. I wouldn't want to bid it. No, I would much rather bid 90k.
You're like the anti-range trader. It's like support is support until proven otherwise. You're like the opposite of that. It's like if it's a support, I don't trust it. If it's a resistance, I don't trust it. Like
I mean,
never trade levels.
I have bull posted 95k support until 3 days ago. Like I was like on Twitter defending this range. I was like,
that's true.
Because people were all over the place, kind of like flip-flopping. At the highs of the range, they were like just breaking out. At the lows of the range, they're like, this is going down. I've been defending it, but now that we've had, like, I don't think the range high holds again because we've had a massive FUD event. If you can reclaim that, that's a big sign of strength. And then I think we just go up. And if we go to the range low, once we've tested it like a million times, and two, we just had a massive FUD event that like it's something that people kind of like not like something that people don't take serious enough is that whenever something bad happens, people don't really give a shit until it impacts price, right? So for example, like if we go down to 95k now and start looking really bad, people are going to give much more importance to like what has just happened in the market than they otherwise would. So basically, like bad news amplify by price going down, and then you get these big squeeze potentials. It's like when you think back with when the tariffs, the Trump tariffs came in first, right? That was bad news, but it took a long time until people actually fully capitulated. Like basically, he came out on Friday. And then Saturday, we had a little bit of bleed. Sunday, we had a little bit of bleed. And then on Monday, it just completely disintegrated. And basically, the tariffs seemed much worse the lower price went. And this is something that you kind of have to have an eye on. Like, you get these sparks. And if price moves in the way of whatever that spark is, it can basically ignite a movement. And it's what we saw with the Trump tariffs. People take advantage of it too, right? Like, that there's a bunch of people sitting in positions that you want to squeeze. And then you have like this little spark that you can take and blow out of proportion, right? Like the Trump tariffs are going to take the entire world down over the weekend. And like, that's perfect Tinder. And then you just like go at it and it fucking giga nukes. So something that you always have to be careful of when you're on the wrong side of it. Like how is the market reacting to the bad news, and is this something that could be amplified by that bad news by parties involved?
Yeah, you gotta love that. Like, you see a massive ramp up in open interest, like through a high or through resistance, and then a tiny bit of irrelevant bad news comes, and the market just flushes, and everyone's like, "Oh, dude, what a scam! It was looking so good and healthy, like until this piece of news came out." It's like, no, this was a diseased, wounded animal that got put out of its misery by the news. You get quite a few instances of that as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think that debate is ever going to die. Like, the pseudo conspiracy theorists being like, there's no such thing as news and everything is insider traded. And the extreme version of that, of it was in the charts, versus, I guess, whatever the opposite extreme of that is, like extremely efficient markets hypothesis or whatever else.
Yeah. That's also really fucking stupid. Both of those are really fucking stupid, as usual. Like the reason why markets like tend to get like or try to be efficient, like people have to make them efficient, right? Yes. Like this is such a stupid thing. Like, oh yeah, the market has always figured everything out. I mean, the reason why it's even remotely close to where it should be is because a bunch of people are smart enough to kind of like see if they can take advantage of a situation.
I mean, it doesn't exist without those people. There's kind of no such thing as a market in the abstract, right?
Yeah.
God, but this is for our spin-off bullshit philosophy podcast. Once people completely stop watching Technical Roundup, or we FUD support for like the 15th time, and they finally had enough. So we need to keep the amateur philosophy in our back pocket for a rainy day, Don.
Yeah, we should.
That's kind of it for BTC, I think. I mean, wick move up or not, the weekly is still literally barely visible candle bodies moving sideways. The daily's back to where it was yesterday, literally.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think the intraday timeframes are going to show anything particularly different. Do you think it's too soon to start making news-based relative strength extrapolations, like, oh, this happened and the market only went down this much, and so on and so forth? What's the minimum time period for those types of arguments to have some weight?
I mean, I would say so. I think we have quite a bit of relative strength. The problem is that, like, when you have, because that news would have, like, in a worse market, would have taken us down like 10% in a straight line immediately, right? Bitcoin barely went to where it was yesterday. So, like, I think there's quite a bit of strength there. It's just really hard to guess, like, what the S&P is gonna do. Trump's kind of like a loose cannon, and if it was not for, like, me just not being sure about the S&P, I would say, like, this is definitely like relative strength, and the market is probably gonna recover. Now I'm like, if the S&P goes down another 5%, like, I mean, Bitcoin's not going to do so well, right? And this is kind of like where I'm struggling right now, because it's, for me, it's really hard to judge how much the S&P should go down if Donald Trump threatens with tariffs every other day. Like, how bad that is, I don't know. Like, this is not my expertise. I signed up for this because I wanted to trade silly internet meme coins or whatever.
Yeah, but then you made your personality hating the silly internet meme coins, Don.
Yeah. But I mean, everything is just reliant on this shit now, and it's too complicated for me to kind of make good calls on how that's gonna go. Like, I'm not a macroeconomist. I think tariffs are, like, quite bad for markets, but I don't, like, I cannot guarantee that that's the case. It's not really where I have my edge. I mean, the market tends to agree when you look at the chart. Like, have you looked at the daily chart on the S&P?
We're about to look at it all together, Don.
Like, what the fuck's
Hey,
that
what the
shit?
fuck? It's just
Like,
a
what the
retest,
fuck
bro.
is
It's
that?
fine. I'm gonna. There are some levels I can make up here.
Yeah, but like that choppy bullshit price action, this is all basically like the market trying to understand, like, how
Pretty
serious
news
the
driven
situation
too,
is.
right?
Yeah, all news driven.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we're all sitting here and we have to wait for the inevitable Trump tweet on Friday night, Friday evening, whatever, that may or may not nuke the crypto market because the S&P is going down. It's like, either you zoom out more and you're just like, this is all noise, which you can if you're not, like, leveraged to the tits, right? Like this Bitcoin move of like 1.5% today, it doesn't really register if you've been, like, bullish since like 16, 15, 30. Even if you're bullish from 40K, it doesn't really matter to you. But obviously, if you're trading leverage and you're in altcoins on top of it, you have, like, big moves on the altcoins today because of this shit, right? So
Yeah.
it kind of depends. I think the most rational thing to do is just kind of like tone down the leverage, because it is a news-driven market and you don't really have insider information. There are people that have insider information on top of all of this, right? And we know that there's a lot of people on Trump's team that trade crypto. Like, he says something, they very likely know at least some bits of it. So you're kind of trading against people that know more than you do, and it's all news driven. So it's kind of like the least edge you could have, other than, like, trying to predict what the president's gonna do. I don't like that. That's why I'm currently just, like, sitting on the positions that I have. Coming to terms with the fact that those might go up like a couple of X, or just might go to zero if something goes wrong. That's kind of where I'm sitting at right now. Like, the trader hat's off and the investor hat's on, but I already took enough profits this cycle that I'm kind of, like, fine with either outcome. I'd obviously prefer if it goes up because I still have money in the market. If it goes down, I'm going to try to buy the dip as a trader again. at the dip, as in the dip with like a big dip, not just like a move from 97 to 95, but a dip that is actually significant.
I don't know, dude. 97, 95 is like in the current range. It feels like a tectonic fucking shift. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it
people
is 2K.
comparing it to March 2020.
Dude, it's the 2K movement.
Yeah, it's massive.
For the majority of the time when we're trading crypto, that would have been like half of the entire value of the entire fucking market. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I look at it right now. Like, I'm like, I have as little edge as I could have. I'm just gonna trust in the plan, but my plan's already like set me up quite nicely by just taking profit. And this is what I'm gonna do this entire cycle. Basically, the higher we go, the more profit I'm gonna take. I'm already at the point where I'm happy with the profits I've taken for the cycle, and then we'll see how it goes. I hope it goes higher.
Yeah. No, it's pretty sensible framework. That's generally, even though it's not sexy, that's generally, I think, a good starting point for portfolio construction. Kind of the longer stuff goes and the higher it goes, you want to be kind of de-risking into it, not adding more risk. And I think the bit that baits people in is the whole supposed wisdom of all the money is made in the end. It's like, well, that's just peak volatility, and all the money is most of the money is lost in the end as well.
Yeah,
that's literally the most dangerous part for your portfolio. So if you're scaling up into that, I mean, maybe you've got, listen, if you've got like chump change essentially, or like a really small portfolio and you're trying to go for some swings, and the cycle, either you're late to the cycle or it hasn't been kind to you, I can kind of understand that reasoning, right? Because it's even though it isn't, it's like, this is my last chance to make it, which we hear every year basically. So that I understand. But if you've been playing this whole thing like moderately and decently, and you're sitting on some gains, etc., you don't want to literally put it all on the line in the last inning, right? It's like if you're winning a sports game of some sort and you're playing moderately / defensive, and you know it's coming towards the end of the game, you don't go from an advantageous position to let's go all in on attack, for example, just to see if we can score an extra goal when you've already secured the win. And if the risk is a draw or even a loss, if you over push it, it's kind of just a bad idea. But I feel like we just romanticize this idea that the end of the cycle, bro, it's so crazy. Like, look at what Sheep did and all this type of stuff. The people just end up sacrificing themselves on the altar of like peak volatility. And it's not even just the top itself that fucks people, as I maintain. It's always the price action that follows after the top, where you kind of really dig your grave there in most cases, because the trading goes to total shit at that point.
I actually really like the analogy. Basically, I generally think, like, let's say your cycle's gone really poorly, and you're just kind of like, okay, I don't have that much to lose, and I'm kind of like losing the game right now anyway. If you take a bunch of risk into something like this, where there's still a chance that this just kind of like turns around and like some of these altcoins just go turbo ballistic, I think that's fine, right? Like, you're basically just like, I've already lost. I might as well just kind of like try take advantage of the last bit that is left, and I think that's totally fine, as long as you're willing to kind of like give back everything. But if you're already in a losing position and you're just kind of like, oh, fuck it, I don't care anymore, I think that's fine. If you're in a winning position, like you said, that's a really stupid strategy, right? Like, that's just fucking greed. Like, you're winning, you're up shitloads, and then you're like, okay, I have to bet all of it on that last play, just to make my balance look even prettier. I think that's really fucking stupid. So depending on where you're at, different advice can help you out there. I think, like, if I was just joining now into this cycle, I'd probably take a bunch of risk too. And I think there's a few places where it makes sense. I generally think personally that we have a little bit more to go, but I mean, as you can probably tell from the way we're talking, I think both of us kind of assume that we're pretty late in the cycle at this point. So I'm playing quite defensive in comparison to someone that might still want to make it and takes a bunch of risk at the end of it.
Yeah, and I think that's why this kind of context is so important, because there are so many different boats people are in, including how they've performed up until now, right? Like, you've been holding like BTC and shit and caught some of the rotations in the interim. You can afford to be defensive. But if you've done fuck all, or if you've just entered, then playing super defense, it's probably still fine, but I can at least understand the argument for not doing so. But that's why these kinds of Twitter conversations and even like live streams and analysis videos and fucking trade ideas, at their core, they're kind of useless because you never know, who you're speaking to and who the ultimate consumer of that is and how it applies to their personal circumstances, risk framework, and other boring nuances like that no one fundamentally gives a shit about. But I just think the sports analogy, for example, or whatever other type of framing just makes a lot of sense. Like, know the game you're playing, and your desire to play that game should at least account for how you've done up until this point and what you've got left to lose. Like, imagine you change your life this cycle and you're gonna like gamble the entire thing on the final month just because you could catch some more. Like, you're insane, right?
Yeah.
But if you're just getting started, you've got like a few hundred or a few thousand, and you're like, YOLO, I really want I think I'm ready and I'm gonna give this a shot. I can understand. You'd almost be an idiot for being like, let me spot BTC into this thing. It's like, bro, take some risk, Newsy Johnson, whatever. Like,
yeah, I mean, even if the cycle is over at that point, right? Like, you can, and I think this is the best advice that I give anyone that is in that situation. I mean, just keep working your job, as dumb as that sounds, right? Like, you're either, and I generally think this is like something that a lot of people need to hear, even the ones that have been mildly successful. Like, the best trading advice I can give you is just keep your job, and then just put a little bit of the money that you make into the market. And then once that trading that you do or that investing that you do takes off completely and your job is like completely marginal to what you make, and at that point you can start thinking about, okay, maybe I'll start doing the trading thing for real or whatever. Because I think it's a complete meme that you need to make this your full-time job to actually be profitable. I think nothing could be further from the truth. If anything, it's much harder if it's your full-time job to make, like, especially if you're reliant on making money to kind of make it. Because you're basically like, if you're struggling to get by, you're sitting there, you're wondering like, hey, if I don't hit this trade, like maybe like who's gonna pay the bills like 3 months from now? Like, that's going to put you in an awful spot. So just like work your job, make some money. If you're wildly successful and kind of like it's marginal, then you can kind of stop doing that. But otherwise, probably just stick to that. And basically, like, if the cycle is completely fucked for you anyway, you could be like, okay, I'm like that last bit, I don't care. I wanna run it up. I can understand doing that, and then just being like, even if I'm wrong and this entire thing fucking nukes to zero, at least I'm gonna have like a new chance to buy back cheap with the money that I'm gonna make outside of the market in the next 2-3 years. And I think that's also like fine. Like, it's just very, very different advice for very different people. You cannot really give good advice to everyone at the same time.
I mean, it's just a part of a broader theme of dispersion. It's like people have different risk appetites, and also people have had radically different cycles because of how this one has played out. It's just pretty fucking difficult, dude. I don't think there are any easy answers there.
I mean, for example, if I was holding Litecoin, right? Let's say I held Litecoin from the start of the cycle to now. I'm up like barely a 2x, right? Like, Litecoin went from 50 to 120, 130 now. Would I like be like, hey, this has been the only trade of the cycle, and now I'm kind of like, maybe I want to take some profits on this? I probably wouldn't at that point. I'd just be like, especially since Litecoin looks kind of decent now, I'd be like, I'm going to stick around with this for a little bit longer. But if I held, let's say, Bitcoin, and I mean, or XRP or Solana or any of those, I'd be like, hey, I don't necessarily need to roll all of those profits into the next trade. I can take some off, right? And I think there's just like, there's a lot of kind of ways to look at it. Like, if you barely started just because you're holding something that's not performing so well, I mean, the problem is that then you're betting on the underperformer, right? But that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yes. I think all of that makes a lot of sense, but is it sexy? Of course not. There's something, you want to die like a poet's death type of thing, Like, I want to be that liquidation wick at the very cycle top, sacrificing like a year's worth of work. There's something just I don't know, existentially satisfying about that. Like, my death meant something. My liquidation meant something. It's not just another API message,
The best feeling is when you sell and then it goes only down from where you sell. Like that's literally the best feeling that you could ever have.
I mean, just
Buying
get
the
in the
bottom.
trenches, Don. If you like that feeling, that's
Yeah, no. It's too like this is too gambly addicting. No, just generally like buying the bottom is a great feeling, right? Like you buy and it goes up forever. And you make money, which is great. But like when you top tick a chart and it just goes down forever, I don't know what it is about it, but it's just so good. Maybe that's just me.
you're just European. I think that's my diagnosis as a professional medical doctor of trading. It's you've got
Fair enough.
Europeanitis. It's incurable and turns you into a bear tard. By the way, the job thing is like completely legitimate. I also think for most people, it's a better use of their time, and it will also just make them better traders. Because I think, especially in crypto, most people overtrade just by definition. They'll just like trade way too much, and they'll also feel like they always have to be in a trade because the market is 24/7, and they're like at this point, what, tens of thousands of coins if you add the on-chain stuff, hundreds of thousands, millions. There's like always something to trade if you want to, like tens of millions. Like there's an infinite amount of coins trading all the time. And so I think the first thing that happens when you go full time is you're like, well, this is my job now, and this is my only job, so I need to make some money, you know. And the likelihood that you start overtrading as a result is really fucking high. And also there's like a real pressure element that comes into it where you're like, I'm trading for rent money essentially, because you know the whole thing of, oh, you need to have X amount of savings before you want to try trading full time. Like, yeah, okay, cool. In theory, sounds nice. How many people are actually doing that? You know, fucking no one. Yeah. No one can afford.
I didn't do it.
I didn't do it either. You know, so like, it just doesn't happen. So whether you like it or not, whether it's agreeable in principle or not, most people will be trading like rent money when they start off, essentially, or money they need for day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month necessities. And like the amount of stress and pressure that puts you under will just make your decision-making, stress levels, and judgment objectively worse. Whereas if you have a job, and especially if it's doing something you like, or maybe it's even working in the industry, so you can build on some connections, networks, groups, etc. I mean, like actual connections and friendships, not fucking, you know, some sort of live stream cabal fucking group chat, but like real peers in the space. First of all, you've got more money. Second of all, your income isn't strictly tied to your trading performance. And thirdly, you, by definition, have to be more judicious with your time because you don't have an infinite amount of it anymore. And I think just all of those things lead to better trade selection, better trade management, less overtrading, and all kind of good things, you know? I think it's just a good thing to do. And again, it's not sexy, but if you're interested in medium to long-term positive outcomes, I think doing something other than full-time trading, or even if the market conditions shift, diversifying a little bit is a good idea. Like, I can understand the runaway premise where it's like, look, this shit is absolutely on fire. I'm losing money every time I'm not on my PC. Like, I'm going to take a break or a sabbatical. That I can sort of contextually understand. Of course, the difference there is, as we've seen from like 2017 onwards, when you start feeling that way, the market's probably like fucked. We haven't got very long left if you get that overwhelming urge. So like short periods where you're like, look, there's just way too much asymmetry, or I've got a massive edge here, I need to milk it and step away. I get it, but I think as a whole, there should be some sort of backbone infrastructure for you, and you'll be better off for it. It's not like a trade-off, like, okay, you're guaranteeing some income, but then your trading will be worse as a result. I actually think it's, for most people, a win-win. Like, you get the income that's not trading related, and I think directly as a result of that, your trading will improve as well.
I generally think like 90% of the people in crypto, if you remove any chart that is lower than the weekly time frame, people would actually make more money, which is like you basically get very, very little signal, right, from the weekly time frame, just because it takes so long. But I think like legit, like if you removed every single time frame other than the weekly and above, most people would actually make more money than they're doing now. And you don't need to sit in front of your computer 24/7 to trade the weekly time frame, right? As simple as it is. Like you can look every 2 weeks at crypto and outtrade people, like, or almost everyone that is just in there 24/7, just because, like you said, overtrading is a thing, and also like it's really easy. Like, for example, today, right? Today feels like a catastrophic nuke, and obviously, like, that's like, it's not nice what's happening today. But the weekly is barely moved at all, and you kind of lose the perspective the high time frame perspective when you locked in on the low time frames too much, right? And like nothing's changed today in the grand scheme of things. We're still in the exact same position we were last week, but people are gonna act completely different today than they might have done yesterday. But nothing's really changed.
Listen, realistically, no one's going to trade only the weekly Don, so I'll meet you halfway and do the 4 hour. Take it or leave it.
That's not halfway. The daily would be halfway. I think the daily is
Listen,
good.
I read The Art of the Deal, okay? Like, I know what halfway is.
Anyway, we should talk about some more charts.
Which charts? Give me some charts. XRP.
We should probably actually not talk about more charts now that I'm looking at them.
No more charts. I think
No
we just
more
lost
charts.
like 80% of our viewership.
I mean,
Trump?
We can look at Trump, but Trump got completely. I mean, Trump just generally, that coin is going to zero. I think even the biggest Trump supporters would agree with me there. Like, I don't think there's a world in which this coin doesn't go to zero in the near term, as it like in the next 3, 4, 5 years. After Trump's presidency, if he doesn't become God King and kind of like puts in another term, I mean, kind of sounds possible, but just generally, like after he is done, this is obviously basically dying out, that coin. Until then, you have massive unlocks basically looming. I think this would have gone up quite significantly if Argentina coin didn't launch, but it did, and now I think the timing is basically not good anymore for it. Something I talked about on the last few streams that I did, where I'm like basically you're so close to the unlocks now that it's really hard to make a sustained run happen, because almost everyone agrees that the moment you get unlocked on, you're gonna get dumped on, and that's kind of like a hard message to chill other people into. Like, no one wants to buy into the unlocks, like, and it's massive ones too, right? Like, Trump owns like 80% of this coin, so it's like if you push this up, like, he has quite a bit of coins to sell to you. Therefore, I like the end result is zero. You have unlocks coming. If the market turns around, it's probably still gonna go up a little bit, but I wouldn't want to be the guy that wants to hold the bag. So not too interested anymore, especially now that that kind of crime season is over. I think the Argentina coin was so high profile and so public, like all that dirty laundry got aired out so publicly. I think that's gonna be uninteresting for a while. Like the Trump, Melania, and Argentina coin, the way money was extracted, all that shit, like people know it now. There's not really anything to hide behind, and like I said, unlocks are coming. I don't necessarily think that's the coin to trade anymore. Was a nice setup though. Like, it could have really ran. I think Argentina like literally just capped by the kneecaps.
I mean, it's just insane that a fucking meme coin is creating national controversies, you know?
Yeah.
That's
People
insane.
underestimate how big that is. Like, holy shit. Like legit, like you had you had impeachment proceedings go against Milei. I've heard like
Dude, anti-corruption investigation, like,
yeah,
because of some fucking fat American who's allegedly bribing the president's sister or something. Like, dude, these aren't
insane.
You're not early if these are the headlines, in my opinion. You know,
No.
Like the thing is, back in the day, you could say you're not early, and you'd know that means basically the same thing for the entire market. But the thing is, there's so much fucking dispersion now that like maybe BTC keeps going, or at least has relative-ish strength indefinitely, and 10, 20%, whatever. Not the end of the world, not portfolio shifting. But then your other coins, as we saw recently, can just legit wipe out your entire market. So there's some dispersion commentary to be made there, but like it feels like in general from crypto, like from the bottom, when you're having two sitting presidents launch fucking meme coins, it doesn't happen mid-cycle, generally speaking, And when you have like national controversies caused as a result and all this other stuff, at least for the sector that's involved in, that's got to be an extreme of some sort,
Yeah, I think that's really well said, because I think there's a good chance that the meme sector as a whole kind of has seen its peak. I don't know how to top it, right? Like the meme sector, basically, I think it's untoppable. Like, who are you gonna have launch a coin next? Like, Kanye West is kind of like talking about it. I think that might be the last one where you can actually have like big headlines, like a big artist, big politician, whatever. Unless you start launching like proper country coins, which I think we're nowhere close. The only country that is not serious enough to actually do that might be the US, and I don't think that's even in the US. I think that's very unlikely. Like I don't think Trump is gonna come out and be like, hey, we're having a US coin now. And that's literally, besides like some banana republics, it's the only country I can think of. So I don't think that's happening. So I think like the meme coin sector as a whole, I think has had the peak of what can launch. Now, obviously, it can still pick up some steam. I think memes are generally like, whenever the market does well and optimism comes back, people trade memes. But just kind of like from like a value extraction point of view, I think this was the biggest that we're gonna get this cycle for memes. So not necessarily topped, but I think that's gonna be a less and less important part of the market. And like you said, it's kind of like it feels like top things, but not for the market as a whole. Not necessarily, could obviously also be, but just for the meme coin sector. I think it's very hard to make an argument that the meme coin sector hasn't gone through its entire cycle.
You know, the clip I keep going back to, I don't know if you saw it, it's quite funny, when they had Aiden Ross on the LA Vape Cabal, and they were supposedly fucking teaching him crypto, right? Blind leading the blind, or a bit of that going on. And he asked like actually very reasonable questions. He was like, where do you go from here, right? Like, Solana's up so much and fucking Trump launched the coin. Like, he was essentially, not in those words, but asking where are the marginal buyers coming from? And it was such a good fucking question. And he obviously got completely dragged for it. Be like, oh bro, no, this is like just the beginning. This is the starting point. But it was a completely legitimate critique, in my view, and I think it's still applicable to some extent. Kind of where do you go from here? You've had two fucking sitting presidents, and every A to D tier celebrity, or at least a lot of them, launch coins. The degree of extraction is becoming completely eye-watering now, you know? Like, I thought it got pretty bad when, do you remember the Solana pre-sale meta? Well, I mean, that was like tens of millions of dollars, right?
Maybe that was more. Quite bad.
But like, people were literally siphoning off millions and tens of millions of dollars for a meme coin address, like to launch a meme coin. At least ICOs back in our day used to fucking fake try, you know? Like, there would be a white paper and you'd need market makers and shit like that, and you'd need to pay off Ian Bellina, allegedly.
In
Minecraft, yes. So you know, there was at least like a performative level of effort you'd need to go through to launch a coin, whereas now it's like, you will pay me tens of millions of dollars for the luxury of me launching a coin and then taking your money, which is insane. So yeah, I think if we haven't already, at least in terms of just like pure predatory extraction within that sector, it has to be near a local maximum. Like, it's insane how sophisticated it is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really help people because they're already down like 90%.
No,
so
true,
us saying
true.
like, hey, this was this was the top and it's down 90%, people are gonna be like, I mean, what the fuck? Obviously, like,
well, yeah, and also, like, as we discussed, no one gives a shit, right? Because you can have another, literally one bundled inside a piece of shit coin run, and that's enough. Because people are like, oh look, there's like a daily runner and the trenches are still cooking. LFG, you know.
I mean, I honestly think this actually, what if the cycle continues, right? I think that's what's actually going to happen. Like, you're going to see like Bitcoin, like, let's say the cycle continues and Bitcoin hasn't topped, all the altcoins haven't topped yet, right? Bitcoin goes to 150k, maybe ETH hits a runner, goes towards like 6-7k, right? Like the good old everything pumps, which I think, like, from a market perspective, it's actually not impossible. If that happens, I think you're gonna see like new meme coins come up, and then you're gonna get like another like banger of a meme coin season, basically, at the end of that. But I think you basically need like a proper coin season of sorts, and then you need to have a nice market for a while. People are going to have to think, okay, meme coins, like that's the thing of the past. Like I think that's the way to revive it, and that's the way to make it even bigger than it is right now. If you want to top like the presidents, by basically having the market go up in a like significant magnitude, like have some coins like maybe ETH, maybe another layer one, go up a lot. These people make a lot of money that they then have to gamble in a meme coin sector of their own, right? Doesn't have to be Solana anymore, can be a different one, can be on ETH, can be on like Bera chain, can be on Monad, can be on like what's the S thing, SUSD? I don't even know what that
Sonic,
stands
that's
for.
Phantom's rebrand.
Yeah, well, there you go. Phantom's rebrand. Like, there's a lot of layer ones, right? You basically just need to make a bunch of people that have this layer one, rich as fuck, have the market kind of shake everything off, and then you can play all the meme coin games again. Uh, and I think even while those coins are going up, that like those layer ones, whichever they may be, I think you can have some nice kind of like meme coin runners. But I think right now it's really tough, and especially it's really tough on Solana just because that's where all the negative attention and kind of all the negative memories also are kind of hanging around, right? Like this is what people underestimate. Like when there's a chain where the majority of people have lost money, it's just not that attractive, right? And Solana was a chain where everyone made money for the longest time. It went from nothing to infinite, but it onboarded basically everyone at the peak of both Solana price and like with that meme coin, like at the peak of extraction season, right? So I think the vast majority of people that are trading on Solana, even though Solana is trading at 117, was trading below $10 just like a couple months ago, are actually underwater. And I think that basically like it's the coin where you lose money on now in people's head instead of make it. And I think that's like I basically think the whole thing needs to move to another chain. Doesn't have to move to my chain. I just generally think that's the way to revive it and keep the scam going. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to happen.
I
or
mean, the
not.
new chain, like people have made soft efforts to try other chains for this, right? Like there was a 12-hour base season, if you remember.
Oh yeah, but
Go on.
the reason why I think this doesn't work, right? And I mean, this is for me like quite a simple reason, is because these people don't have money. Like you need these coins to run first,
I see.
so
What
that
about
people have
Hyperliquid then?
money.
Shouldn't all the altcoins in there be?
I mean, a lot of the altcoins on Hyperliquid went
Yeah,
a shitload,
that's
like
true.
went
That's
up a
true.
shitload at the like immediately everyone got rich basically, and then they rugged afterwards, which is the normal cycle, right? So I
Yes.
basically think you need like an
A wealth
event that
effect,
makes
right?
you basically need a wealth event where people get rich again, and then wherever that may be, right, whether it be in the ETH ecosystem or somewhere else, like that is going to be the place where you're going to see activity as long as it's usable, right? Kind of disqualifies ETH. But there's a lot of chains now, right? Like the advantage of Solana, like ease of use and all that stuff. Like there's a lot of coins out there that are actually quite fast now and that you can use quite well and that kind of just function. So if you make enough holders of any of those chains rich enough, you're gonna get like speculation on those. And anyone that like is like Don, you're just such a Solana hater. This is exactly what we went through with BNB last cycle,
Yes,
right?
ETH too.
And then like the cycle before it was ETH, right?
Yeah.
So we had ETH in 2018, 2017. That was everything was on ETH, all the ICOs, everything. You had a few coins like there was Neo, there was like a few coins where you could actually do something
Yes.
on the chain. And they were used, but not nearly as much as ETH. And then you moved on to BNB the next cycle, and then you moved to Sol the next cycle. And I think just generally Sol went through most of that cycle already. I could be wrong, but I generally think it's time to kind of look for the next wealth event where people make a shitload of money, and then you can jump in there and take the money from them. Or maybe you even catch the coin that runs that hard and then make money and then roll that into meme coins. Just don't lose all of it again. I think that's basically the way to make this casino keep rolling. As it is right now, I just don't see how it can without external force kind of like pushing everything up.
Yeah. I think that's very reasonable. Just some of the new launchers, because of the token dynamics and kind of market appetite for new launchers and new listings, etc. It's very hard to have like a wealth event immediately when everything goes down only. It could happen later, right? Like you have the initial unlock listing insider exit dump, and then if stuff actually happens on the chain, there's no reason why it can't recover and then create like a deferred wealth effect. Like Hyperliquid, I think, was the exception to the rule. Because it's just fundamentally really quite different from all these other VC type launches. But I wouldn't strictly write something off on its initial kind of first listing performance and say, oh, this chain is cooked, no one's making money on it. You at least want to keep tabs on it, because if it recovers, if anything, that would mean that with a lot of insidery people shaken out, then most people who were buying when it was a piece of shit are now in profit, and those people who are buying the exit of the insiders probably have higher conviction on average, right, than like your random speculator. So it's kind of useful stuff to look out for. I don't know what that fucking chain looks like. I think still, just given the tools and lindiness, it seems like Solana's got a chokehold on that part of the industry. I don't know what it's going to change, what it's going to take to change it, but I think the answer might be the question itself, right? Like maybe it is a large wealth event on a very usable, scalable chain of some sort that gets through its initial humps, and then people start building. I mean, I won't say building apps and stuff, because I think it's time we stop pretending that's what people give a shit about, right? Unless the app is speculation, but just like build stuff that people want to use. I mean, Pump Fun is kind of an app, right? Fundamentally, it's built on Solana. So something similar that gives people what they want. And I think just for a lot of people, they don't like the conclusion that what people want is like massive speculation. Even if it's super insider riddled, it's still the game they want to play, because they think they can even if it's worse odds than a casino, like for them the upside is higher and the low odds are kind of worth it, because you only need to win once type of thing. And that seems to be the sort of primary use case. I don't understand why that's a point of confusion, by the way. I don't know if you've seen this, where it's like, oh look, like, if you look at the Dune dashboard, most people have like lost money on Sol, and this is more rigged than a casino. It's like, well, it's not the point. I don't think look, maybe the average person doesn't know the probabilities involved and how insidery a lot of this stuff is, fine, but like a lot of them do. A lot of them do, and like knowingly play the game, because they only kind of, the overriding perception is I got to get it right once, no matter how rigged it is, and that's all it takes,
or I only gonna get into the right group once and then I make money forever. I mean, people are just kind of like, they get scammed and they look for ways to scam. I think just generally it's a little bit sad, but I do agree with you. Like most people actually kind of know that it's rigged. They just think they're smarter than everyone else. And it's easier to tell yourself that you're smarter than people on the internet than it is to tell yourself, hey, I'm smarter than the casino, I can win in this. Like if you can kind of like, it's easier to tell yourself that you're going to have an edge trading crypto than it is to have an edge in like sitting at the casino and trying to win there. That's why I think a lot of people are attracted to it. But one thing that I want to mention is that like we've seen everything that's been launching in the last like 3 months or something has been having a down only trend, right? Like they get launched and it's immediately down, and then it's just down forever, right? And there's something that's changed in the last couple of days. We had Kaito launch that actually went up from the launch pretty much immediately. We had Barachain launch that went down at first, like that got launched like a week ago or something, and that went down at first, but actually went up afterwards as well. So that might be like an interesting vibe shift on that front, because everyone's just kind of been like, okay, you get an airdrop, you get like something that you invested in, you immediately want to short it, hedge your position, make a bunch of money on that. And I think like there has been a significant change in character. It's hard to say whether that's because those are like good projects, or if projects now launch at prices that are actually sustainable, or if it's just like a fluke. But this is something that I have an eye on just generally. Like I want to see how new products kind of start, because it's not the case. Like everyone keeps saying this on Twitter, but it's not the case that stuff that launches only goes down, right? Like in bull markets, if anything, we've had a lot of launches where it basically launches and then goes up forever. And I think that kind of shift is is significant. So it's something to look out for if that can maintain or not.
Yeah, like the recovery, even if it nukes initially, like the Uniswap, for example, right? The airdrop,
Yeah.
the one back in the day, like that got pretty sure that got nuked to the floor immediately, and then everyone kind of regretted it forever. It's like, oh, I've got a PlayStation 5, get out of the house.
People were selling this shit. People were selling this. They got the airdrop and then they were selling it and felt like geniuses for like a couple of days, and it literally went to infinity, right?
Yes, literally infinity. It's still going.
Like it's just like completely insane valuations, and
yeah, it's true.
The good thing is for someone that actually likes some of these projects. I personally have no idea what they do. I don't know what Kaito does. I don't know what Barachain does.
Just keep yapping, bro. It's fine.
Yeah, but for someone that actually does like this stuff, things seem to launch at like somewhat more reasonable valuations
they
now
get
than
there
they
quickly,
did
right?
in the past.
Yes.
Like, and that's a good thing for someone like that doesn't have like a good way to allocate, basically, because a lot of these are like launching at prices that still have like upside potential. Whereas in the past, like in the last couple of months to maybe even the last couple of years, basically stuff launched and then it was already at unreasonable prices. And I mean, I would still argue these are like really high prices, right? Like full diluted valuation wise. But they're much more reasonable. And I actually like to see, at least for altcoins as a whole, like to see them recover. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on. If I see more strength on those, it'll give me kind of like an insight on how the market generally is looking at things. Like if you see newer launches actually start getting bids and like start trading nicely instead of like just pure garbage, you know that there's a little bit of an altcoin bid that is left and that is back. And that's a good thing for you as an altcoin trader, something that you want to see. So more strength of those, like both of those are like a good surprise. Now, obviously today has kind of put a hamper on things, but it's something to look out for.
Yeah, it's a cool meta indicator to look at, you know, Yeah, I'd say the only confounding variable there is if it, you know, if it starts nuking on launch, you need to figure out if it's market sort of sentiment and people just used to selling launches full stop because it's been working, or if there's some like fundamental driver there that the market is repricing it. But you'll kind of get your answer, a couple of weeks later or something based on the recovery. So it's still a useful metric. Solana, by the way, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so something, especially for stuff that you like, you should keep an eye on, even if it has bad price action, or especially if it has bad price action at the start, because then you actually have a chance to get a meaningful allocation to something that you do like.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like when the whole market, I mean, this used to be much more the case. It still is on sufficiently high vol days, but like you'd have something that's really strong and it just gets nuked because someone gets liquidated on BTC. Like you can't say, oh, well, this is red, therefore it's weak. Because if the entire market's correlated and it's just gets lumped in this basket of, oh shit, there's no liquidity I need to sell, some of the stuff there is garbage and is getting repriced appropriately. Some of it is like very mispriced and is being dragged by liquidations and correlations, whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing here. Like if it starts nuking on launch, like yeah, maybe it's just a piece of shit, but maybe it's just, I don't know, momentum sellers on new listings are going to give you a good entry. And that's on you to figure out. Too smart for me, Don. I don't know that shit. Solana.
Solana.
It's been going down for a few weeks. Don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah. I mean, Sol BTC just looks like ETH BTC did before it went to zero.
Oh, come on.
Straight up. I mean, look at it. Like, put them next to each other. Like,
oh shit, it actually does. What the fuck?
Like, it 1-to-1. Like not.
Yo, nah, come on.
Like,
that's crazy.
it literally looks 1-to-1 like ETH did.
Yikes.
Like,
bottom signal, right? Hashtag.
There's even if you put them next to each other, right? This is the one that I like the best. You put ETH BTC on the 2-week chart.
Fucking I don't know if TradingView blessed me with the premium, my brother. Let me let me give this a go. The 2-week chart. I I can do the 1 week. Let's just do week by week. It's fine.
Yeah, but the nice thing is that you basically put ETH BTC on 2 week and Sol BTC on 1 week, because Sol's playing out like a little bit faster than ETH does.
Okay.
Doesn't really matter. You don't have to, but they basically look 1-to-1 the same if you put them on that ratio.
Ugh. Just some of these BTC pairs are just like they're allergic to long consolidations.
I mean, yeah, you don't want to see that.
Yeah.
like,
But
like
it's all USD. Have you looked at that?
Yeah.
I've always
I mean,
struggled for like levels that I like on this thing. Monthly aside, like the typical monthly meme levels, and even those got a bit noisy. Like the ones we talked about with like highest close and stuff. Like I'm sure you'll admit that's on the noisier part. The good ones seem to be the monthly cluster from fucking ages ago. But that's at like what 122 to 99 essentially, roughly.
Yeah, and that's also so old,
and that's pretty fucking old at this point too. Yeah, so I don't know. What's your roadmap for this thing, like levels wise? Do you care?
No, I like if I was bearish, if I was bearish crypto, I think this would be the chart to take my bearishness out on. I think
it out on like some sort of therapy.
Yeah, I mean, just basically like all of this negative, like if crypto goes down, right? Like if Bitcoin goes down, if crypto goes down, all of that negative headlines that we've had, basically, like I talked about earlier, with like basically with the fire analogy, right? There's a lot of kindling. There's a lot of like easy fires that you can make with Solana. So if the price goes down, like the crypto price generally goes down, I think Solana is gonna be like an easy target, and it's gonna get dragged through the mud. So that's the place that I would be looking for if I was bearish. Now I'm still delusional enough that I think we're probably going to get one move more to the upside generally in crypto. So I'm not like necessarily looking for these kind of trades, right? So I don't necessarily have much bearishness to take out on the market. So I'm not touching Solana at all, because I think if it's a trade, it's a bearish trade, and the bullish trade is only like, hey, this is too shorted because people are too bearish on it. And I think that's a terrible kind of trade in comparison to other coins that you could be trading. Like there's coins that might actually create the wealth effect and have like that kind of running that we talked about earlier, where it goes and makes people rich enough that they can like have the same as Sol had this cycle, like as in like in period of massive activity on the chain. I think for me, it makes very little sense to focus on Solana, other than just taking the bearish case. But I'm not willing to do that either. So it's not really that interesting. And the levels suck too. Like everything about this chart. Yeah, I mean, everything about this chart is just awful. Like the monthly is shit, the weekly is shit.
Okay, fine. We know. But what if the daily above the breakdown level, I don't know, 180, 186, you can trace it back to maybe the May, July highs, and you get the sort of recent lows, like 180 to 186. Is that something? Just ignore the fact that it's being retested right now. And
technically it's a bearish retest right second.
Yeah, but if you like don't look at it and it's above it, wouldn't that be sick?
200.
200.
Like above 200.
I forgot you're a breakout trader.
Like above 200 is kind of like a proper reclaim. Okay. And then like I don't want to, like, because Solana's been the leader of the cycle, right? So I don't want to shit talk it too much, because maybe it just continues leading. Like it's really hard to guess when the leader's gonna stop leading and starts underperforming.
Yeah,
it eventually always does, right? We had the same with Link back in the day, where Link was just outperforming massively, and then it stopped outperforming. Everything else went up. Link didn't do shit.
Yes, but other times it works a bit differently, right? When you have the lead performer go to shit, it's kind of a sign of the market itself going to shit. I mean, Sol Luna AVAX is like an extreme example. But that dynamic does exist when you've got like an outright leader. All the fucking bid in the world is concentrated. All the flows are concentrated on one asset. When that starts underperforming, that's kind of a broader risk signal. Do you think that applies to Solana in this case, or is there too much dispersion in the market to have like a single proxy measurement for this kind of thing?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like I just don't know. I generally think like
you're supposed to have the fucking answers. I'm so disappointed, man. Like I asked difficult questions that I didn't know the answer to, and I'm like, oh, I'm about to find out the answer. You're like, I don't know. I'm holding you. Like, okay.
I mean, I generally like I look at this thing and I just don't like how it's set up. but I also acknowledge the fact that it's been the leader. So like, if you like it, and there's a lot of people that like Solana, right? And if you like it, I mean, don't let me kind of like talk you out of it. I think there's plenty of reasons to like Solana. I mean, the reason why it had the whole like meme coin season in the first place is because it's one of the first cryptos that's actually been able to handle that much load, which is a good thing. I don't think it's just the Solana thing. I think there's a lot of other coins that can do similar things. It's just they don't have the activity. It's the hardest part about kind of like having a layer one, like just getting the activity going. But yeah, I personally, I'd stay away. It's not really that
Stay away from
interesting. It's too
Sol.
complicated.
Stay away from leverage. Stay away from shorts. No, dude,
Oh, I think like if you want to trade leverage, it's a better time now than like the meme coin casino was kind of like enticing like a couple of months ago for people that are. Do you remember when we talked about this? I was like, hey, like you really should be trading leverage. You should be trading like looking at these kind of like
yes.
smaller cap coins, do all that kind of shit. Like that was like, I don't know, like ages ago. I think that's not necessarily true anymore. Like I think you probably have worse odds on meme coins right now than you have in leverage trading. The problem is that your leverage trading odds are always terrible. It's just that the meme coin odds went down so low that they actually managed to undershoot.
Return to
So
tradition is all I heard on.
yeah, so right now you're kind of fucked either way.
Great. Well, never short of optimism, are you?
I
Uh,
mean, the European way.
the European way. I think bigger picture, like to surmise all we've said, I mean, BTC kind of hasn't been moving. There's a lot of anemia there. You look at the daily chart and it's just absolutely depressing. It still feels a bit split off from the rest of the market, but I don't know if you agree. It kind of feels less split off than before, where it'd be like, yo, the trenches are getting like fucking wiped out and everyone's in altcoins that are underperforming, but BTC is just doing its own thing. That's so sick. Whereas now it's like the trenches got fucking eviscerated and BTC is kind of sluggish, you know? I feel like the degree of dispersion has gone down a little bit. Even if it's not reflected price-wise, just the difference between the two is less extreme than it was. ETH, I don't think there's just been a material change in character there, if that makes sense, where it was like, it always feels fucking heavy. It's always scary when it goes up. And now apparently you can just get 1 billion of it from a centralized exchange. Like, there hasn't been like a big narrative shift there. I think similar for ETH BTC, even though things accelerated on the recovery side, if you look at the daily time frame, it's almost looks like the BTC daily time frame, right? And the ETH, like BTC, ETH BTC daily time frames, just like don't speak to a particularly interesting market. I feel like this is just contextually, rather than jumping week to week, being like, oh, you know, what's changed. This still feels like a hangover from the massive liquidation wick that we have. You know, when price action turns into just like a big sluggish piece of shit after you get a massive wipeout like that, I still feel like that's kind of the dominant narrative from like a trading perspective at the moment. And yeah, we're getting like headlines and like some outlier relative strength on, I mean, Litecoin-ish recently recovered quite well, but even then the recovery only took it to like a local extreme, right? I say only, it's a big fucking move, but it's not like you suddenly have V reversals and trend forming moves on these instruments after the wipeout, right? Like we had a massive leveraged wipeout and most of the market like bounced. Some bounced more than others, but there's nothing where you're like, yep, holy shit, we're back to where it was, you know? Like V reverse trend continuation, that just hasn't played out. You look at all these majors and they still feel fucking sluggish and hungover from the big wipeout, and the recoveries have been very sort of mechanical. I know it's a bit of a meme word, but there is some truth to it. Like mostly mechanical recoveries, and everything else is just like a bit meh, you know? The timeline is fun, but from a trading perspective, like we ate shit on the wipeout, bit of a bounce, but it's not V reversing and it's not trend forming either. So it's still kind of that's the shadow for the most part that I feel like still cast over the market. Do you think that makes any sense, or is that like a stale view?
It does. I mean, just open the S&P chart and look at it again, and then it'll explain it.
Yeah, okay.
Like I straight up think that's one of the main reasons. Like people really don't know what the fuck to do in the new paradigm that is the new US government. I just straight up think that's it. And then people are like, it is very positive crypto, but also like they promised short-term pain, and then people are just kind of like, what the fuck do we do? And I think that's kind of where we are right now, and that's where we're gonna be for a while. And unless that kind of changes, we're gonna be stuck in this kind of shit price action where it goes up and then some bad news rolls around, and then it reverses all of the good price action,
And then Sailor buys, you know.
and then Sailor buys, it goes back up, and then bad news again, boom, we're back to
The
square
bad news
one.
is ETH going up 2%.
Yeah, like God just throws some more challenges at us because he sees that we still haven't had enough because we still buy ETH.
It's because we're the bravest soldiers. That's why, Don.
Yeah, I mean, what can we do? We just buy ETH. But yeah, I think that's basically where we're at right now, and I think that's gonna be the story of like basically the story for the next couple of weeks. I hoped that it would stop, and I mean, it kind of did look like it.
Yeah, when you bull posted at the Pico top, it was
exactly
almost done.
But now that it's back at support, it looks bad again. nah. I mean, I still like it. I still like the prospect of. I generally still think this is quite the bullish range, all things considered, for Bitcoin. It's just the problem that people have is that their altcoins are going to zero while this is happening. Like Bitcoin is ranging, their altcoins are going to zero. Bitcoin's not really. Like you could at least justify your altcoin losses if Bitcoin went down, but not the case, just going sideways. You could justify it much better if it traded in any other way, but it's not. So people are just sitting altcoins just in full pain. And I mean, that could continue for a while, I think. While you have relative strength in Bitcoin, you have relative weakness in the altcoins. Besides like a pocket of a couple, like I think generally the ETF coins have been doing quite well. It's something that I've kind of like been trying to make obvious to people.
What are those? Litecoin, XRP, Solana.
Yeah, Litecoin, and Litecoin being one of the more obvious ones.
Yeah.
Then you have Dogecoin, which has also quite a high chance to get an ETF.
Yeah, it's a great chart.
I actually haven't looked at it in a while. I'm not really interested in Dogecoin because I think basically Elon's popularity has topped, and he has a lot to do with Dogecoin. So I think that's out of the equation. But if you think Elon is gonna get more and more popular, I think that would be a decent bet. I just think Elon is kind of like that. Like Elon's chart, if I could short it in a way, I would. I think that's topped. And how I express that is just not being interested in Doge because I think that has contagion risk of Elon just completely
crashing
going crazy. Yeah, I legit think there's a chance that he just crashed. I mean, he did. I mean, there's a bunch of his ex-wives and wives on Twitter like messaging him like, dude, what the fuck?
That's
like,
rough.
This is insane. Anyway.
What about Hyperliquid?
I mean, that's a decent one just because I think it's a decent exchange. I don't like the chart is whatever. It's a range, which is quite strong considering all the other altcoins have been going down.
Look like 100%.
Yeah. So I think that's also relative strength. I'm not hating on it.
For sure.
Not really personally interested, but I think it's a good trade. Like probably like that's one of the better ones if you bullish crypto. But I do like I like Litecoin from the ETF trades. I like Litecoin the best. From kind of like everything together, I like XRP a lot still. Just because it also has the ETF. It's probably not going to be as early as the Litecoin ETF, but it's still quite high up the list. I think Litecoin's actually quite a nice play.
It's just the problem. Trade you're going to shill us?
I mean, I don't really have anything. There is a breakout trade that you could take, which is
136.
Like, yeah, but people got wrecked today on that one.
Yes. I mean, they listened to an old Casual Friday where you probably said the level gets weaker with every test, and you know I disagree with you so hard every single time. And then they remembered that you buy into resistance to avoid breakout trading, and now the P&L doesn't feel so good. So
yeah, but open Litecoin monthly. Litecoin used to be monthly.
Jesus Christ. I mean, that's a wick.
Yeah, and that's like look to the left, like that's like a nice kind of consolidation to take as resistance / now support, like the February March candle of 2022.
Yeah.
Like that's holding really nicely.
Oh, that's so
considering that
funny, dude.
everything
I
else
can't.
going
Like,
down.
imagine you're like, oh, okay, it's the month of February. Let me buy first test, best test at the monthly level, and your fucking drawdown was like 40%.
Yeah,
And then you're
this
still
wicked
holding, being like,
so
yo,
nice.
listen, it's a monthly level, bro. I'm not closing. I'm gonna wait for the close, you know.
And you
then now
actually got rescued.
and now you're break even after eating a 40% drawdown. Oh Jesus, TA is such a meme. I love it.
Yeah, but I mean that's a good chart. If you ignore everything else going around.
That's how I do all my analysis.
Yeah, I mean that's how you have to do it now. It's so shit. Like it's just generally like when you talk about it, it's so hard to give like good reasoning just because nothing makes sense anymore.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you need to be an extremist. You either got to try to schizo yourself into following everything, like all the flows, all the correlations, ETFs, traditional markets, Trump stuff, all the crypto native flows, etc. Or you have to go full fucking tunnel vision. Like, there is a line that I like on this chart and I'm buying it. You know, like I don't care if there's a nuclear holocaust outside. This is a support level. I feel like
straight up, yeah.
I feel like if you're in between those, it's a tough time right now.
Yeah. And it's really hard, but I've turned my brain off, and I'm like,
Nice.
I think it's gonna go one more time higher, maybe even more than that. But I think that's what I'm owed by the market, and I'm just gonna ignore everything else. And I could be completely hilariously wrong on it, but that's why I took some profit. That's all I like. This is the best advice I can give. Now, obviously, if you lost all your money, me telling you like I took some profit, it doesn't really help you much, because if you're taking profit on a massive loss, you're still in deep shit. But I mean, it's all I can say realistically. Nothing makes sense. Just try to survive. Maybe you'll make it, maybe you won't. It's never been as uncertain as it is right now.
It's a fantastic parting message, I think. And we did a lot of really productive charting and not much bullshitting, as we always do. As we always do
the show keeps getting worse.
I know, the show keeps getting worse. It's unreal. The best comments come from the fucking bots, which is... No, I'm joking. Thank you to all those who chat with us. We do still read all the comments. Not the bot ones, but the real people.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I think that's it. Hopefully we'll have some more exciting... I mean, the exchange stuff, I mean, it's news, but it's not price-related per se. It didn't really... I mean, it sent shit back to the boring realm, if anything. So that's not particularly exciting. Hopefully everyone's okay. That's all from us. Thank you to Wu5 supporting the show. If you want to check out our perp decks, links available in the description below. It feels fucking awful having that chill on a day where a centralized exchange is hit. You know, you don't want to be that opportunistic. Can't be like, you know where your funds are safe. It's like, well, you don't know that either, because there's like other risks with other platforms and stuff. But whatever, you know, neither here nor there. Spread out your counterparty risk regardless of where it is. But thank you to them for supporting the show. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.